Hello, everybody. Dean Lloyd here again from Lloyd Consulting Company, Just Conversations, episode 18. Solution-focused communication with a goal of informing systemic change. And as always, my next guest needs no introduction. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Dean. Awesome to see you, and thanks for giving me some time today. Over to me. Wow, that's a bit of a question, isn't it? So, I suppose I've been kicking about in the sport, leisure, health sector for about 24 years. Passionate about supporting those most in need. Spent a career really around social inclusion, and just somebody who really values the power of sport, movement, and physical activity, really. So that's a bit about my work. Obviously, this is an English accent, been over here in Australia for 15 years. And I'm an Australian citizen, Dean. Got that wrapped up pretty soon as I arrived.
Glad to have you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Living in Sydney next to Centennial Park, which is just an amazing lifestyle, and just feel lucky to be here in Oz.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for giving us that little bit of insight. And I think, it's been sort of the theme that shone through with all the people that I have spoken to is their passion for what they do. And I think, well, I know that's what's really connected me with you. Like, you're passionate about what you do. It shines through, and there's overlap in what I like to do around movement and getting people moving. I really do believe in that, and believe that the longer you keep moving, the less chance you got of dying. So yeah, did you say 24 years you've been doing it ish?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Not to
what
give
did
your
I
age, mate, but anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What have you seen that's like the progression in that sort of space changes over those periods of times? Big ones, small ones?
What a good question. I think it depends on which perspective you look at, and where I suppose we're looking from a geography point of view, because obviously, I look about what's happening in the UK a lot, and over there there's a real focus around systems leadership and trying to tackle inequalities through a more collaborative approach across different sectors, Dean. So that really is interesting to me, to try and tackle some of these kind of systemic issues. Culturally things are a little bit different over here. We may be more sport focused in terms of Australians seem to have that winning instinct on the pitch, whether it's in the Ashes, that competitive nature. But I think as a whole, there's a recognition now that sport, movement, physical activity can contribute to more social outcomes, right? It's not just about getting people fit and healthy. It can tackle other things as well, as we've talked about.
Yeah. And I think that's a really valuable point for me anyway. I believe you've heard me say this before, but I walk in the morning so I don't kill anyone in the afternoon, and mainly myself. My movement and exercise is for my mental health. Essentially, it's not about the fitness. So I think that's something that's changed for me around, as I get older. My body doesn't like to go as fast as it used to.
Yeah, and I think if you're not feeling too well, or a bit down, I think that there's many things we can do, but getting the body moving is really important, and one of those three pillars of health, whether it's food, nourishment, sleep, or physical activity. That's one of the things that can make you feel a bit better. I mean, it can't solve all social problems, but it can certainly go a long way.
It's a good way to connect too. If you're exercising, it's somewhat of a team sport, or you go somewhere and there's other people around. So I think there's an importance in connection as well, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, Yeah, and reflecting on your first question around, who am I, and
Yeah.
I suppose that the what got me into sport originally, Dean, was I moved to Germany when I was what 4, and didn't speak the language, and it was a bit chaotic at home with young parents, and they had a few addictions, which we've kind of spoken about, and was one of the things that we really connected on. But football was the one thing that connected me with all these other kids who I didn't speak the language, and that really has stuck with me,
Yeah.
to who I am today, and what is part of my worldview, and my values and behavior. Today I was just down at Maroubra, actually, delivering a pickleball session for youth off the streets.
Oh, nice.
And it's my favorite time of the week, Dean, because like I just get to connect with these kids, and they just need a bit of encouragement, bit of support. We have a bit of a laugh, and the sport is the thing that connects us all, right? And they're all going through shit, and they've got, there's stuff going on there, but for that little bit of time, the activity that we do is that glue, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know, well, on that, I know that you do a bit with older people, and keeping them moving. The concerns around technology and children and the interruption of them getting out to get to pickleball or whatever, is there, and I don't, like I said at the start, I don't really want stats and data, but is there evidence to suggest that there is that waning of people participating in youth sports because of technology?
Youth. Yeah, yeah. I think adolescence, there's a big drop off there for teenagers, particularly for girls. And as we, young boys getting a little bit older, and you get into other things, and devices, it's a huge issue, isn't it? I think in England, no, in South Australia, actually, I think the Premier was talking about banning people with phones at school for under 14s. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, social
So
media, I think
so
he's talking about trying to ban
yeah,
social
yeah,
media for kids under 14.
yeah. So I think there's probably some regulations going to come in at some point, Dean, to
Yeah.
look at it. But it's so addictive, isn't it? Like I think for all of us, looking at phones. So that is definitely a barrier.
Oh yeah, I know, because well, I've got a friend staying with me at the moment, and he's all about the virtual reality. He's got the goggles.
Oh yeah,
68 he is 68, and he's like, I would happily live in that world, happily live in that world that he's created for himself. But just
yeah.
how that interrupts his exercise, because he's older, he's got some ailments and all that sort of stuff. But how he said that what he's noticed is it makes him sit around a lot more, where he thought it'd have him up moving and doing a bit of exercise with whatever's on his goggles. So yeah, it's interesting how it can either be incorporated, like Wii Fit and when all that was around, and how technology and where that will disrupt exercise.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity to use like that type of entertainment, esports and things for movement. I think that's gonna come. But obviously, like you're saying, we do got an issue with sedentary behavior with people sitting, a lot. And you were just talking there about seniors, and uh, loneliness is huge, Dean. For one 3 people are lonely, and you can be with somebody but still be alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And that connection is really important. The VR is good, but I still think that human connection is important. We are human.
Yes.
So we are social animals. So I think that connection is important. But yeah, the work that we do reducing social isolation and loneliness for seniors is just an absolute joy. And the benefits to that cohort is, I think, huge. Just meeting people, and
Just the
getting the body
ripple
moving a
effects
little
of, like,
bit.
you know, like you said, the connection, and like it just ripples, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that socialization afterwards, we
Yeah.
do a bit of activity. Like today they were doing Tai Chi. Yesterday it was light exercise, but then we have a tea and coffee afterwards, and we can't get rid of them. They love it. So
Not that you want to either.
Yeah, it's no, not that I want to, but time is money. And I'm only
Yeah.
joking. But yeah, it's that's been something that's emerged in the last, like, I don't know, 12 months for me. I never really thought I would really focus on that, but it's, you go where the energy goes, and that
Yeah,
has been
yeah.
that's been coming up, and it's obviously a big problem for us these days. And I think seniors care is there's lots of issues out there, Dean. We could name 20 of them, but that's something that we're focusing on with Collective Leisure.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I like about its movement. Like I try and talk to people. It's like, let's just move. It's like, it's not a competition. It's not exercise, and you move. And my experience has been, when I move, I always feel better.
Yeah.
And whether it's the endorphins or whatever. But can you talk to me a little bit about the Blacktown? The names slip me at the moment.
The symposium. Yeah, yeah. And thanks for you're on one of the panels and
Yeah.
you got some amazing feedback. As always, you're very inspiring, Dean. But I suppose with some of them initiatives that we talked about, we feel like we're doing good work, but health inequity is still getting worse, inequalities are still widening, chronic disease is on the rise. So it might be good in little pockets, like the seniors that we talked about, or the youth off the streets today, but we're not really making a difference on some of these health and wider social outcomes. So what we've done, a group of us over the last 2 and a bit years, we've kind of come together across Western Sydney, 13 local government areas, and we're trying to look at how we can enable more active lives through a systems approach. So, academia, disability, education, non-for-profit, social enterprise, public health, government, etc., to see how we can work on the system a little bit to try and get people moving, and then obviously reduce inequalities and improve well-being.
And I think even just providing a space for access, like access points. Where can I go to do that? How do I know where to go to do that? Like, let's, provide more points of access and ease of access. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good stuff happening, Dean. Like what we're trying to do with Western Sydney Moving is not actually deliver anything. It's more about illuminating and
Yeah.
connecting and supporting the system. So we have a community of practice every 8 weeks, and we get somebody from Western Sydney who's, delivering some amazing activities, and it's just an opportunity then as well for people to share and collaborate. We had 105, I think, at that symposium that you came to, and we all came together in
Yeah. Yeah.
Blacktown, and we've got another one in Parramatta, and that's going to become a health promotion charity, which we're going to launch in November. So pretty excited about that.
And it's, what I hear then from what you said is it's a solution focus, a collaborative approach. Like, we're not going to go in there and, we'll duplicate your service and compete for money. It's like, hey, you do that really good. I got a guy over here that could benefit from that. Like, I really value that systemic collaborative approach, and let's do what we do well, somewhat stay in our lane as much as possible, and leverage each other.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's what's got us here is not going to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah.
So we need to just collaborate more and put the ego to the side and not be all about competition, working against each other. That's not easy. That takes a certain
Especially the
developmental
funding models, mate. That's a bit of a bugbear of mine, is like, at some stage you may have to compete for funding, because, and then what that drives, you know what I mean? And I'm still trying to find someone that can help me come up with a funding solution around that. But there's no perfect solution to anything, but just a way of improving it around having a big pot and how we access that, and what we have to do to get access to that. But yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement around how money streams in to services like that.
And I suppose context is king, isn't it? So it depends what we're talking about in terms of service. That's why I like the social enterprise model, because it's not charity. You're actually trying to deliver services. You trade like any other business, but you're there to make the world a better place. You're financially viable, but you're trying to have a social outcome as well. But I also think that, there's so much opportunity with the resources that we've got. I don't think it's all about asking for more money. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
our facilities, for example, leisure facilities, could we use them at different times for certain population groups? There's parks and there's other facilities. Like, we just need to create those conditions, I think, which there is some good work happening, but it's just little pockets, and it's
yeah.
about joining it up, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you got to start somewhere, don't you? And hopefully, these people get in the right spaces and they bloom and grow, and you know, and they get, my opinion on these things is it's better to satellite them into other areas and you go in there and what do you need? Oh, this worked here and that worked there, over and above. You get what you get and you don't get upset because it works really well here.
Yeah, and I know that you're a firm believer in this, but lived experience is so important, isn't it? And that co-design. So just because it's worked over here, this is what I think,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not going to work somewhere else, like, so
totally.
that's really important.
And even just my lived experience is different to yours, but there is overlap in our lived experience. You know what I mean? So how we can come together and collaborate and co-design. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think being open-hearted and meeting people, like I remember the first conversation I met with you, Dean, we ended up in tears, right?
Yeah. Yeah. More than happy to cry at the
Like,
drop of a hat, mate. Don't worry about
so it wasn't just me. I'm not,
that.
obviously you do that with
No,
everybody,
you're
but
special, mate. You're special.
uh, yeah, and I think that was why I'm mentioning that is because, we live a life, sometimes got a facade, like there's obviously there's lots of layers to us, but when somebody really opens up that vulnerability and connects with you, like that's really cool. And I think that's what I felt with you when I first met you.
Yeah, and it's somewhat, people find it a confronting word, but intimacy, and
Mm,
into me you see. Like when I allow people to see into me, they
yeah.
allow me to see into them, and the humane connection in those spaces are powerful, can be life-changing.
And if we're talking about community and creating programs out of that, like
Yeah,
what can emerge out of that is really, I think, is
community-led,
really,
based, designed.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I had Dr. Jazz on, that he was one of the presenters.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, he's a great man. Really get on well with him. But he's talking about doing walking consults. So like how,
mm.
let's keep people moving, and how do we have a walking consult? It's like, wow, that's, I like the sound of that. I'd go to the doctors more if I could walk. Don't want to sit in a room with sick people.
Oh, it's true, but even when you have meetings and sometimes and you sat down, and
Yeah,
you sit with, it's a bit awkward, like you're looking at them and it's like, but if you get out and go for a walk around the park and start to have a chat, it like you feel a lot more open,
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that it also stimulates creativity. Yeah.
yeah. And where where do you see the innovation happening in the work that you're doing now? Like where, like big picture outs, like, oh, this is really exciting around where things might be going and what that might look like.
Yeah, good question. So I think there is a recognition that this whole of systems work, that it's not any one organization, it's many,
Yeah,
towards a common good in the work of, what I'm doing, the partners I'm working with in Western Sydney. And I think for me, a lot of it is about relationships. And I know this, probably is going backwards a bit, but you look at how strong initiatives are grown, and even look at the indigenous culture about relationships, and like looking after the land, and you caring, and like it's I think we've got a lot to learn there, but building networks at a local level, I think, is really important, and that takes time, and
yeah,
you I think it has to be genuine, like you need to put that time in. and then, you know, I suppose bigger things can grow from that.
And that's, you know, I'm a big advocate for investing. What am I investing? Am I investing time? Am I investing money? But if I'm there, I need to be investing something. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And you, if you're here, what are you investing? And whether it is time or whether it's a space to use, and you know, that's, I think, the community model. How can we get individuals to invest foundationally and then build on that? Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, I think, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
when you're saying investing, it's invest, just showing up and listening and learning and spending that time, I think, is important. And the other thing, back to your question, I think a focus more on preventative health, than
Yeah.
the
Proactive.
reactive model of,
Yeah.
how much I'm not going to, you said you don't want stats, so I'm not going to tell you how many billions we spend on the health system, but it's a
Yeah.
bloody lot of money. So we could turn that around a bit. And I'm sure Dr. Jazz has talked about social prescribing and stuff that he's doing with healthy care. I think a lot of that is really exciting.
You know, and I think you touched on a little bit there around it, mate. Like, it's around sort of consolidating. There's this, I think, a conception that more is better, and if we do it bigger, it's better. Whereas, as you said, paring it back, really listening and consulting, building a foundation, like a solid foundation. So it may feel like you're going backward, not backwards, but you know, there may be a shrinkage in somewhat of whatever it is. But I really think there is a need for those sorts of things to happen to change systemically.
Yeah. Yeah. I think local is important. Hyper local,
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
and like you said, it's not cookie cutter, taking the same model into other areas. It has
Yeah,
to every environment's different. There's lots of variables. There might be some principles around it, Dean,
yeah.
we've just co-designed a program with Pacifica Community in Mount Druitt. Oh, it's
Oh
fucking
yeah, nice.
brilliant, right? Absolutely loving it. With UTS, ethics approved, and the Pacifica
Nice.
community said they wanted a program for Pacifica mums, right? Because
Yeah. I think that she was
they're
there at the
the
thing. Oh yeah. Yes.
yes, exactly, the matriarchs of the family, but sometimes they maybe don't care for themselves as much, so there's that self-care. So this is about giving them the some time and some skills and some support, and then they can ripple effect. But they came up with I think it was the 6 F's in terms of what's right. So it has to be free, has to be fun, has to be family, and faith as well is important. So
Yeah.
there's some of the things that for them is important when it comes to developing programs.
Yeah, that's it's really good work you're doing, mate. Really good work. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Um,
All good.
what brings you joy that you do that allows you to ripple that out into, I fill my cup up, modeling the behavior, all of that sort of stuff. Where do you derive your joy from?
It's purpose, I think, for me. It's the work. I probably oversteer it, Dean. Like,
No,
what am I, what am I running away from? I've been, I've
passionate, mate.
done
Passionate. You're passionate.
been in therapy for the last few years to come to terms a little bit with my grief and the reasons why I come to Australia and kind of looking at that. So it is passion, it is purpose. It gives me joy. But it's interesting to reflect on it. I think it's sometimes to look after my own well-being and my other relationships are probably as important as well. But that's it fills my cup up, Dean. So
Yeah.
I feel very lucky to do the work I do.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So part of, I was talking about to Dr. Jazz about this, part of the assessment tools that I have is, when people are coming out of custody, incarceration, what do you, like, I asked them that question, what's fun? And most of these people don't have a concept, mainly because they're in fight, flight, free. They're just so traumatized. They don't even have a concept of what's fun. And that's this is where I sit now and from my fellowship and all of the stuff that I've learned is how can I introduce humane practices into environments that are trauma inducive to increase instances of joy and hope. And I think we've spoken about hope, haven't we? And the importance.
Hope. Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just remind me.
Just such an undervalued resource. Like, when you're doing all of the peer-reviewed stuff and, ethics and, when you tell people about hope, they're like, oh, that's, yeah, how do you can't measure that. So, but for me, when I was running wild, I lost all hope. So,
Yeah.
and when I lost all of hope, I didn't care about me and I certainly didn't care about you. And then I start to behave in those ways and I'll just take whatever I want because I have less than hope.
Mm.
So, and I think it's something that's often really, I've said it already, but so yeah, like we need hope. We need something to look
Yeah,
for.
I think you're right. I think when that goes, I've seen it, then I think it can be very detrimental to people, when they lose sight of that. And I think what else is coming up for me there, Dean, is, for me, I'm quite optimistic. Like that's a
Yeah,
bit of
yeah.
an understatement. In terms of my partner, she says I've got ungrounded optimism, right?
Delusions of grandeur. No, not quite
So,
that.
but I think that has actually come from my trauma, like because that's how I've turned it
Yeah, yeah.
around, and it's just been about being positive. But
Yep.
there is a bit to there to when maybe the reality is not there, and um, but yeah, I think mindset is a really
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? And such an important thing for people in terms of their well-being again.
Yeah, yeah. But I think I think acknowledging what you've been able to achieve and since I've met you, but everything that's happened and all that sort of stuff, you have every right to believe that, mate. Keep up with the optimism.
Yes, well, thanks. I
Don't let
remember
that
one manager
negative
said,
Nelly talk you down, mate.
no, well, I remember one manager once said, David, sometimes the glass is just half empty.
Yeah, fair call.
And this somebody who it's somebody who I really respect as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
But sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just shit, and sometimes
yeah,
people just want you to be there and listen, not tell you it's going to be all right, and at least
yeah. And sometimes
So
it's
so that's
half full of
some
fish water
learns.
too, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a growth opportunity for me.
Yeah, yeah, nice, nice. Our time's coming to an end. Is there anything that you want to spruik, sell, tell us about events, all of that sort of stuff that people might want to get involved in?
Not really. I think just thank you for the opportunity, Dean, and love what you do, and hoping that we can work a little bit closer together sometime in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
No, I appreciate your time, mate. And as you know, as we've said, it was a really, I'm trying to think of what's her name? Amy. Amy was the girl from LinkedIn, wasn't it?
Yes,
Amy Smith,
yes,
that's
yes,
the name.
yes, yes,
Just about to
yes.
have a baby, mate. So good luck with that,
Oh
Amy.
wow.
But she was the one
Yes, good
that
luck.
steered us into each other.
No,
Oh
thank
yeah,
you.
no,
Yeah,
it's yeah, I feel like we're really connected at that point in time. But and it's lovely
yeah,
to
we did.
stay connected and to see the work that you're doing. And or as always, mate, let me know if I can help or do anything with you. But love your work
Yeah,
and thanks
yeah.
again for your
You
time.
too, Dean. Yeah, really nice talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.